Having this additional tax up your sleeve as a negotiating tactic might be very beneficial to the US, that they can threaten these additional taxes but not impose them.
Where do you view right now the possible impacts? How could it impact Australian investors?
Yeah, so what it does is any country that's being seen to be imposing these unfair taxes, Australia is one of them, will be hit with an additional 5% tax at the discretion of the US Treasury Secretary per year, up to a cap of 20%. So if that were to be imposed on Australian investors in US assets, that would be hugely problematic. Where the question of interpretation seems to be coming in, and I've seen research and analytics on both sides, is what exactly is captured. There are those of the view, and these are highly credible researchers, that believe equities will not be captured and US Treasuries will not be captured. So if you're an average Australian investor with a superannuation fund that has exposure to US shares and you have exposure to US government bonds, this view would be, that's okay, you're not going to get hit with any additional tax, you're fine. The alternative view is this absolutely will be imposed on those sorts of assets, and therefore if you are holding those sorts of assets, you would be quite concerned that the withholding tax rate you're going to pay is going to ramp up quite dramatically unless Australia changes its foreign tax regime, which is not necessarily something we see happening in the near future.
If the President is looking to bring manufacturing back to the United States, presumably investment is going to be needed to fund things like new factories. What is it that I'm missing? I feel like I'm missing something.
Look, you're not alone. I think a lot of us are feeling like we're missing something. It's worth noting this is just a bill at this point in time. It hasn't been passed, and we will get updated text on this particular section coming this week. So we're going to get some more clarity, which I think is really important. At the moment, there are clearly a lot of people who have strong views, and there are others, and I'm in this camp, who feel like we need more clarity before we understand what the real impacts are likely to be. Your point about the need for foreign direct investment is real, and Trump's been really clear about how successful he's been attracting investment to the US from foreigners. It doesn't make a great deal of sense to go imposing additional taxes on those people who are investing in your country if that's something you're trying to attract. It is also worth noting that trade negotiations are very, very much live at the moment. We're in this 90-day pause on tariffs, and there is the view that having this additional tax up your sleeve as a negotiating tactic might be very beneficial to the US, that they can threaten these additional taxes but not impose them because they're not hard-coded. This is at the discretion of the Treasury Secretary, so they might not impose them but use them as a leverage tool in negotiating.
Is it too early to talk about whether investors are already reassessing America as a destination for precious investment dollars?
I don't think it is. I think that's a great question. You know, there's clearly some anxiety about being invested in the US for a whole variety of reasons. I mean, it's a very uncertain environment. We overuse that term, but it really is an uncertain environment, and this bill is not helping the case. I think for a lot of investors, and we see this internally at NAB and at NABTrade, US equities are incredibly expensive at the moment. They have bounced back so aggressively from those Liberation Day lows. They came into 2025 very, very well priced, very expensive by historical standards, and they've bounced back close to those all-time highs. US Treasuries also, you know, it's very hard for investors to see a lot of upside here, and the risks are very material. There's a lot of downside risks. So it's going to actually be quite difficult to unpick, I think, if we do see a flight away from US assets. How much of it is just that US is quite expensive, and how much of it is policy uncertainty and some of the other risks that really do exist in that jurisdiction.
Gemma Dale, good to speak to you.
Thanks so much for having me.